Hello everyone, I am Dr. Rohit Chakor and today I am going to talk on fracture shaft of femur and fractures around the knee. Fracture shaft of femur is a fracture involving high energy injury that is associated with life threatening conditions. These conditions are ipsilateral femoral neck fractures, tibial shaft fracture, cerebral hemorrhage, thoracic injuries. The treatment for this fracture involves rimmed, statically locked intramedullary nails that is associated with more than 95% union rates. The incidence for this fracture is around 37 per 1 lakh persons years. Mechanism involves trauma. High energy trauma is commonly seen in younger population, often as a result of high speed motor vehicle accidents. In elderly population there is low energy trauma, often resulting from a fall from standing. It may also involve gunshot injury. The fracture pattern are because of the bending moment which causes a transverse fracture. A spiral fracture is caused because of the rotational moment. Oblique fracture is uneven bending moment. There is a segmental fracture in shaft because of 4-point bending moment. Comminuted fracture is due to high speed crush or torsion mechanism. Associated conditions with this fracture in orthopedics are ipsilateral femoral neck fracture, which has an incidence of about 2 to 6%. Often basicervical, vertical or a non-displaced fracture is seen. There is lack of displacement due to majority of energy is dissipating through the femoral shaft. It may be missed in 19 to 31% of patients. It may occur bilaterally. The femoral shaft fractures may occur in the both femurs. Significant risk of pulmonary complications arise because of this. There is increased rate of mortality as compared to unilateral fractures. Ipsilateral tibial shaft fractures can also be seen as well as ipsilateral acetabular fracture due to high energy trauma. As you can see on the X-ray, you can see an ipsilateral neck femur fracture as well as shaft fracture. Moving ahead, other conditions seen in thoracic region is pulmonary injury. Early surgical treatment of femoral fracture can lead to acute respiratory distress syndrome. It is seen in approximately 2% of cases. Treatment can proceed when patient is approximately resuscitated. Cerebral hemorrhage or subdural hemorrhage. The early surgical treatment can exacerbate neurologic injury. Intraoperative hypotension can decrease brain perfusion, leading to cerebral injury. Relevant anatomy related to the shaft femur. So, in osteology, this femur is the largest and strongest bone in the body. Femur has an anterior bow. There is a presence of linea aspera, which is a rough crest of bone running down middle third of posterior femur. The attachment site for various muscles and fascia is linea aspera, so which acts as a compressive strut to accommodate the anterior bow of the femur. As you can see in this image, there is a strut of bone which is called as linea aspera, and there is an anterior bow of the femur. So these things are very relevant in case of fixation of these fractures with intramedullary devices. Muscles which form the compartments in the thigh around the shaft of femur are: in anterior compartment we have sartorius and quadriceps, in posterior we have biceps femoris, semitendinosus, semimembranosus. The adductor compartment has gracialis and the three adductors, which is adductor longus, adductor brevis and adductor magnus. Biomechanics relevant to this injury is this musculature acts as a deforming force after the fracture. So proximal fragment is abducted because of gluteus medius and minimus. They are the abductors of the hip and they insert on greater trochanter. The fragment is flexed because of the iliopsoas, which flexes the fragment as it inserts on the lesser trochanter. The distal segment goes into varus because of the adductors inserting on the medial aspect of the distal femur. Also, it goes into extension due to the pool of gastrocnemius which attaches on the distal aspect of the posterior femur. On the image, you can see that these muscles are very strong muscles and they lead to the deformity in the fracture. So, how this patient presents? Initially, you have to evaluate the patient according to the ATLS protocol, which is Advanced Trauma Life Support. And in this case, first thing is the airway, breathing, circulation. And if everything looks fine, then you go for the fracture. So, first of all, you have to see adequate resuscitation, normal vital signs, heart rate should be less than 100, systolic blood pressure should be more than 100 millimeters of mercury, diastolic should be more than 70 millimeters of mercury. It should be normothermia, that is temperature above 35 degrees Celsius. Urine output should be adequate. In case of compensated shock, which is commonly missed, you have a normotensive patient but there is tachycardia without fever, the extremities are cool, the pulse pressure is narrowing, weak peripheral pulses are felt, and there is delayed capillary refill. So you have to see for these red flags to diagnose compensated shock. Symptoms with which the patient's present is pain in the thigh. On physical examination, inspection would show us tense, swollen thigh. There would be blood loss in closed femoral shaft fractures of about 1 to 1.5 liters. For closed injuries in tibial shaft fractures, we have 500 ml to 1000 ml. The blood loss in open fractures may be double than that of closed fractures. So this is an emergency and patient may land up into hemorrhagic shock. The affected leg may often be seen as shortened. There would be tenderness about the thigh region. The motion is not possible. Examination of ipsilateral femoral neck fracture often difficult secondary to pain from the fracture. You also have to see the neurovascular deficit. You also record and document the distal neurovascular status. We classify these fractures according to the Winquist and Hansen classification, in which type 0 is no comminution, type 1 is insignificant amount of comminution, type 2 is greater than 50% cortical contact, type 3 is less than 50% cortical contact, and type 4 is segmental fracture with no contact between the proximal and distal fragment. This classification is important to decide upon the treatment of these fractures. As you can see in this figure, type 0, type 1, there would be type 2, type 3 and type 4. In type 4 there is a lot of comminution. Type 3 has a large butterfly fragment with less than 50% contact. Type 2 is more than 50% contact, and type 1 is minimally displaced fracture. Similarly, on this X-ray you can very well see the various types of fractures. What you would now do further is do the imaging radiographs. Recommended views are AP and lateral views of the entire femur, AP and lateral views of the ipsilateral hip. This is very important to rule out coexisting femoral neck fracture and opposite shaft and femoral neck fracture. AP and lateral views of the ipsilateral knee are also important to rule out any injury to the knee and leg. CT scan is indicated if there is mid shaft fracture to rule out associated femoral neck fracture. On lab, we see for septic non-union the ESR CRP being the most sensitive to the presence of occult infection. We also do complete blood count. We have to do WBC count. We have to see whether the patient is adequately resuscitated. Then you have to see interleukin 6, which should be less than 500 picogram per dl. We have to see serum lactate, which should be less than 2.5 millimole per liter, and the base deficit should be within -2 or +2. How will you manage this patient? These patients are managed non-operatively with a long leg cast or hip spica cast. These are having only a very limited indications. A non-displaced femoral shaft fracture in patients with multiple comorbidities which are found to be unfit for surgery are to be treated with non-operative treatment. Otherwise, all patients are to be treated with operative treatment. Also, in pediatric patients where you don't have implants of the size for the pediatric patient, in that case you put a long leg cast or hip spica cast. So operative treatment involves many modalities. Important one is external fixation with conversion to intramedullary nail within 2 to 3 weeks. Indication for this is unstable polytrauma victim, vascular injury, severe open fracture. In this case, the importance is given to saving the life rather than fixing the fracture. So you do damage control orthopedics and try to avoid any major surgery till the patient becomes stable and fit for the definitive surgery. We also can do open reduction lintel fixation with a plate. Indications for this is ipsilateral neck fracture requiring screw fixation, fracture of distal metaphyseal diaphyseal junction where intramedullary implant cannot be used, inability to access the medullary canal because of any deformity or any other problem. So in that case we use the fixation with plate. Other modality very important in this case is antegrade intramedullary nail. This is the gold standard for treatment of diaphyseal femoral fractures. Outcomes are very nice. Stabilization within 24 hours is associated with decreased pulmonary complications, decreased thromboembolic events, improved rehabilitation, decreased length of stay and cost of hospitalization. Exception is a patient with a closed head injury. In this case, we are not going to do antegrade intramedullary nail immediately. This is to avoid hypotension and hypoxemia. We also can consider provisional fixation, like I have told you, with external fixator known as damage control orthopedics. There is one more modality of intramedullary nailing called as retrograde nailing, where you can put the nail through the knee upwards. In this figure, the first one, you can see a hip spica put for the child. The foot is remaining open, whereas the other part such as the ipsilateral knee and the leg is in the fracture, in the plaster. Similarly, you see an intramedullary nail fixation done in the second photo. In third, you see a retrograde nail put from beneath, from the knee upwards. You see a plating done in the fourth picture. Moving ahead towards distal femoral fractures. These are the traumatic injuries involving the region extending from distal metaphyseal diaphyseal junction to the articular surface of the femoral condyles. The surgical treatment options for this include open reduction internal fixation, intramedullary nailing, and distal femur replacement. Incidence is less than what we see for sharp femur fractures. It is about 3 to 6% of femoral fractures. It is less than 1% of all fractures. It has a bimodal distribution. Young healthy males may also get these fractures, whereas elderly osteopenic females are also prone for these fractures. Mechanism for this injury in young patients is same as that in sharp femur, which is high energy with significant displacement. In older patient, it is low energy, often fall from standing in osteoporotic bone, usually with lesser degree of displacement. Relevant anatomy is the anatomical axis of the distal femur is 6 to 11 degrees of valgus. The medial condyle extends more distal than the lateral condyle. Distal femur becomes trapezoidal in cross section towards the knee. Lateral cortex of the femur slopes around 10 degrees. Medial cortex slopes around 25 degrees in the axial plane. The posterior halves of both the condyles are posterior to the posterior cortex of the femoral shaft. This is very important when you are fixing the fracture and you don't want to put the screw in the joint, or you misplace the plate fixation and cause excessive valgus or varus in the fracture in the knee joint. Muscles which are the key deforming forces, these are quadriceps, hamstring, adductor magnus, gastrocnemius. Ligaments around the knee such as anterior cruciate ligament, posterior cruciate ligament, medial collateral ligament, lateral collateral ligament. So in biomechanics, the hamstring and quadriceps cause the femur to shorten. They pull it upwards. The adductor magnus leads to distal femoral varus or valgus. Direction of deformity is dependent on the location of the comminution and relation of the fracture lines to the adductor tubercle. Gastrocnemius extension of the fracture site may occur because this pulls up the fracture fragment posteriorly. This is called as apex posterior. Rotation of condyles when an intercondylar split is present would lead to rotation of the condyles. These patients present with history commonly after fall or traumatic event. Pain of distal femur that is made worse with knee movement is a common symptom. Inability to wet bear is again very common. On physical examination, inspection shows there would be tenderness, swelling, ecchymosis, and distal thigh and knee. There would be a varus or valgus deformity. Knee effusion may be present with intra-articular involvement. We have to evaluate for wounds concerning for an open fracture. 5 to 10% of supracondylar fractures are open fracture. We also see for the neurovascular examination, we evaluate the vascularity of the limb by seeing the popliteal artery, also dorsalis pedis artery and posterior tibial artery. The potential for injury to popliteal artery is this fracture because if there is significant displacement, the artery would get torn. The ankle brachial index should be performed if there is a concern for vascular injury. Angiography is indicated if this index is less than 0.9. If it is more than 0.9, that means 99% negative predictive value. If it is less than 0.9, 97% specific and 95% sensitive for major arterial injury. Now we move ahead and do the x-rays for these patients. Recommended views are AP and lateral. We may do additional views such as traction views in AP lateral and oblique traction views, which can help characterize the injury but are very painful for the patient. We also do the x-rays for the adjacent joints, obtaining imaging for entire femur to rule out any other associated injuries. We also do x-ray for the contralateral femur. Consider views of the contralateral femur for preoperative planning and templating. Findings in this case can be very difficult to visualize intra-articular extension on X-ray. As you can see, this is the lateral view of knee joint where it is very difficult to diagnose any fracture. Condyles are mal rotated in sagittal plane with respect to each other. Sagittal intra-articular split is most common, which is called as a Hoffa's fracture. Intra-articular distal femoral fracture in the coronal plane, which has 38% incidence. It is seen in on the lateral view. It is also missed in up to 31% of cases. So on this X-ray, if you are not able to diagnose a Hoffa's fracture, it may be because the line is not clearly seen and it is a coronal split and the X-ray is in the lateral plane. Lateral condyle fractures are more common than medial condyle Hoffa fractures, which has 80% incidence. In elderly patients, we have to evaluate for any pre-existing knee degenerative joint disease. Other investigations to be done is CT scan. CT scan is indicated for preoperative planning of this intra-articular fracture, evaluating intra-articular involvement after external fixation to assess pattern combination and intra-articular extension. What we see on CT scan is a separate osteochondral fragment in the area of intercondylar notch. Coronal plane fracture, that is Hoffa's fracture, is seen on CT clearly in 40% of these patients. Lateral femoral condyle fractures are seen in 80% of patients. We can do angiography if we are suspecting any vascular injury. There should be obvious sign of vascular injury, that is hard and soft signs such as pulselessness, rapid expanding hematoma, massive bleeding, etc. It identifies vascular segments with diminished flow. Vascular injury is diagnosed and documented. Displaced distal femur fracture may result in injury to the popliteal artery. These are the images of CT scan where you can clearly see the Hoffa's fracture where the condyle is falling down on the coronal view. We can also see an angiography where there is loss of vascularity below the tibia, which is because of popliteal artery injury. How will you manage these patients? Non-operative management with hinge knee brace is to be indicated with stable non-displaced fractures, which is very rare. These are indicated in non-ambulatory patients, a patient with significant comorbidities presenting an unacceptably high degree of surgical or anesthetic risk. Majority of these fractures are to be operated. The operative methods would include external fixation, which is a temporary measure to restore length, alignment, and stability in patients who are unstable or polytrauma patients, where the soft tissues are not amenable to surgical incisions and internal fixation, or until the patient is stable. The contamination of the fracture has occurred because of open fracture and it requires multiple debridements. In that case, we use external fixators. The definitive treatment for severe open or comminuted fractures may be done with external fixator. The patients who are very unstable for surgery can also be fixed with using this modality. We can also do open reduction and internal fixation with a plate. These usually are the gold standard. You use these in case of displaced fracture, intra-articular fracture. The various plates are used. Most commonly used plate is the traditional 95-degree devices, but these are contraindicated in Hoffa fractures. A periprosthetic fracture with osteoporotic bone, you have to use the plates. You have to use it in non-unions. A fixed angle plate is required for metaphyseal comminution. Non-fixed angle plates are prone to varus collapse, so these are not used in metaphyseal comminuted fractures. We may also use retrograde intramedullary nail in extra-articular fractures or simple intra-articular fractures. In this first photograph, you can see a fracture is fixed with the help of a plate put on the lateral aspect. The preoperative x-ray of the fracture is also seen. You see a displaced condyle going posteriorly because of the hamstring pull, because of the gastrocnemius pull. We see an intramedullary device used for fixation of this condyle, which is a retrograde nail. Complications resulting because of these fractures are there would be stiffness in the knee, pain in the knee, which can be treated with early range of motion and physical therapy. Symptomatic hardware, that means the pain with knee flexion extension due to the IT band or the iliotibial band contracture because of the contact of this muscle with the plate. Malunions are very common deformities after plating, which include rotation, hyperextension, which is called as recurvatum, and coronal malalignment. Non-unions can also occur up to 19% of patients, most commonly in the metaphyseal area with articular portion healed. Risk factors for this is associated with soft tissue stripping in metaphyseal region. Treatment would be revision of the open reduction internal fixation and autograft bone graft. There would be complication of infection, implant failure, or loss of fixation. Loss of fixation may lead to varus collapse, which is most common. Moving ahead to patella fractures. Patella is also a bone around knee. So these patella fractures account for over 1% of all skeletal injuries, more common in male with preponderance male to female ratio 2:1. Most fractures occur in 20 to 50 years old. Mechanism of injury is direct impact injury, which occurs from fall or dashboard injury. It causes failure in compression. Indirect eccentric contraction usually occurs from rapid knee flexion against contracted quadriceps muscle. It causes failure in tension. There's a different entity called as a patella sleeve fracture seen in pediatric population in about 8 to 10-year-old children. High index of suspicion is required because this is not usually seen on X-ray. Anatomy relevant to this bone is this is the largest sesamoid bone in the body. Its superior 3/4 of posterior surface is covered by articular cartilage. The articular cartilage is the thickest in body, up to 1 centimeter. Posterior articular surface comprises of medial and lateral facets, where lateral facet is larger, and these facets are separated by a vertical ridge. Soft tissue attachments to patella are very peculiar. The quadriceps tendon inserts and the fascia lata is attached to the anterior-superior margin. Quadriceps tendon comprises of three layers. Superficial layer is formed by the rectus femoris tendon. Medial layer is formed by the vastus medialis and vastus lateralis tendon, and the deep layer is formed by vastus intermedius tendon. A patellar tendon attaches to the inferior margin. Blood supply of patella is derived from anastomotic ring originating from the geniculate arteries. Most important blood supply to the patella is located at the inferior pole. These fractures are classified according to the anatomy. It can be described based on the fracture pattern. So, non-displaced, a displaced fracture with step of more than 2 to 3 mm, or fracture gap more than 1 to 4 mm, a transverse fracture, a pole or sleeve fracture, upper or lower pole, a vertical fracture, marginal fracture, osteochondral fracture, or comminuted stellate shaped fracture. These patients are presenting with a history of direct blow to the knee or extensor mechanism. On physical examination, you see a palpable patellar defect. There is significant hemarthrosis. Motion, the patient is unable to perform straight leg raising test, which indicates failure of extensor mechanism. The retinaculum is often disrupted. You can aspirate hemarthrosis and inject local anesthetic if patient is unable to perform the range of motion due to pain. Provocative tests, we have to perform saline load test to rule out any open fracture. On imaging, you do the recommended views, which are the AP and lateral. The lateral view is best view to see a transverse fracture. A tangential view can be done to see a vertical fracture. You can see the X-ray. Besides a lateral view, you can see a transverse fracture, whereas a tangential view is seen showing the vertical fracture. A CT scan can be obtained if suspicion of a patellar stress fracture is there, a non-union or malunion is there. MRI may be obtained if child has normal X-rays but unable to do the straight leg raising test. Differential diagnosis for this fracture, usually there is a condition called as bipartite patella. It may be mistaken for patella fracture. It affects 8% of the population. The characteristic position for this bipartite patella is superior lateral position. It is usually bilateral in 50% of cases. On X-ray, you can see a bipartite patella. It is not a fracture, but it is an anomaly seen in normal patella. How will you manage these patients? Non-operative treatment is done by a brace or a cylindrical cast and full bed wearing. Indicated when there is intact extensor mechanism, patient is able to perform straight leg raise test. The fracture is non-displaced or minimally displaced. There is a vertical fracture pattern. Early active range of motion with hinge knee brace is seen. We can also do early weight bearing in full extension. Progress to flexion after 2-3 weeks is to be done. Operative treatment would lead to open reduction and internal fixation with a tension band wire construct. The indication for this is we have to preserve the patella whenever possible. Extensor mechanism is failure, that is patient is not able to perform SLR. Open fractures, fracture articular displacement more than 2 mm, displaced patella fracture more than 3 mm. There is a patella sleeve fracture in children which requires open reduction. Partial patellectomy in comminuted superior or inferior pole fractures measuring less than 50% of patellar height. Only if open reduction internal fixation is not possible. We can also do total patellectomy, which is reserved for severe and extensive combination not amenable to salvage. In these photographs, you can see the fracture transversely present over the patella and is fixed with a K-wire and tension band wire figure of 8 construct. In second picture, you can see there is a use of screws instead of the K wires. In third photograph you can see there is a vertical fracture which is fixed with a screw as well as wire construct, the wire being a circlage wire. In fourth, if there is no possibility of fixation with a K wire, you do only the circlage. On X-rays also you can see how the tension band wire construct seen on the AP view and a lateral view. In second X-ray you see use of screws instead of K wires. Here you can see and circlage is used with K wires because of the comminuted nature of the fracture. In second X-ray you see screws as well as K wires as well as circlage wires are used. This last photograph is very peculiar. Peculiarity of this is removal of patella, which is called as total patelectomy, is done and there is no patella seen in front of the femur. Then moving ahead to the next subtopic, which is the proximal tibia fracture. Tibia being the bone which inferiorly forms the knee joint. The tibial plateau fractures are the periarticular fractures of the proximal tibia frequently associated with soft tissue injuries. It has a bimodal distribution seen in males in 40s, which is because of the high energy trauma, and seen in elderly osteoporotic females in 70s because of falls. Location, mostly these are unicondylar, more common than bicondylar. Most commonly involved is the lateral condyle, then comes the bicondylar, and then comes the medial. Mechanism for this injury is either varus or valgus load with or without axial loading. There is a high energy trauma frequently associated with soft tissue injuries. In low energy trauma, usually insufficiency fractures occur because of age, associated conditions because of the degeneration, and there would be meniscal tears. The lateral meniscal tear is more common than the medial and is associated with more than 10 mm articular depression. Medial meniscal tear is also seen, ACL injuries are seen, compartment syndrome is seen. Vascular injury is commonly associated with fracture dislocation. Relevant anatomy for this fracture is the tibial plateau laterally has convex shape proximal to the medial plateau. Medial plateau is concave and it is distal to the lateral tibial plateau. Muscles in the anterior compartment, they attach to anterolateral tibia. The pes anserine attaches to the anteromedial tibia. Biomechanics include the medial tibial plateau bears 60% of the knee's load. The classification for this fracture is Schatzker classification. In type 1 there is lateral split, type 2 lateral split and depressed, the type 3 is lateral pure depression fracture, type 4 is medial plateau, type 5 is bicondylar fracture, and type 6 is metaphysio-diaphyseal dissociation. These photographs depict the fractures. In type 1 you see a lateral split fracture. In type 2 there is split as well as depression. In 3 there is a lateral pure depression. Type 4 is a medial fracture. Type 5 is bicondylar and type 6 has a metaphysio-diaphyseal dissociation. These patients are presented with high energy trauma in young patients, low energy falls in elderly. Inspection, you have to look circumferentially to rule out any open injury. You have to palpate for compartment syndrome and see for the compartments whether they are firm or not compressible. We have to see for the varus valgus testing for any laxity more than 10 degrees, which indicates instability. We have to perform these, but very often this is very difficult to perform because of the pain. Neurovascular examination is very important in this case because any difference in the pulse examination between extremities should further be investigated with ankle brachial index. We do the normal x-rays which are with two views, AP and lateral, and we can also do oblique view to help in determining the amount of depression. Optional views are plateau view or 10-degree caudal tilt. CT scan is very important in this intra-articular fracture because we have to identify articular depression and comminution. Findings seen are lipohemarthrosis indicating an occult fracture. Fracture fragment orientation and surgical planning is dependent upon the CT scan. MRI can not be done for these fractures, and we have to do MRI if we suspect for any meniscus injury or a ligamentous pathology. We have to manage these patients. These are rarely managed with non-operative hinge knee brace. These fractures are usually minimally displaced split or depressed fractures, low energy fractures, stable to varus valgus trace, non-ambulatory patients. So these patients don't require to be operated, whereas majority of other patients would require operative management. Again, three modalities: external fixator with limited open percutaneous fixation of articular segment indicated in severe open fractures with marked contamination, highly comminuted fractures where internal fixation is not possible. Outcomes are unacceptably high. Malunion rates usually requires delayed arthroplasty in setting of highly comminuted fractures in the elderly. The gold standard for this fracture is again open reduction internal fixation. Indication for that is articular step of more than 3 mm, condylar widening more than 5 mm, varus or valgus instability. Any medial plateau fracture has to be fixed. All bicondylar fractures have to be fixed. Timing for the surgery is very important. We can do external fixator, which is a temporary bridging external fixation with a delayed open reduction internal fixation, where patient has a significant soft tissue injury and a polytrauma patient who may be unstable for doing the definitive surgery. So this was injuries and fractures around the knee. I hope you have understood everything. Thank you.